Welcome to the Simple Minds podcast, where we look to empower and encourage real conversation amongst men everywhere by unpacking topics on self-help, philosophy, and business. Welcome to the Simple Minds podcast. It's Matt J. Hannam here, and I'll be your host for the day. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello, Jay.
Hello. It's MJ or Matt J,
MJ.
if you prefer.
I'm not sure you want those
Mate,
acronyms at the moment.
Well, I prefer to think of Jordan, but if you're thinking of someone else, then you go for that. But I'm not the smooth criminal, mate. I think you are. That's what your mum said anyway. All right, gents. So first we'll just dig into the drink because I think it looks like everyone's thirsty. You've got a nice little pour. I appreciate you for pouring it for me, Jacob.
Generous.
We've got some early involvement from you in today's
Better drink.
One of my
Better use. He doesn't speak, he can be the pourer.
So, listen, guys, I brought in a wine or a bottle that's been pretty much in my pantry, in my cupboard for years, but not this particular bottle. Madfish, a great southern Pinot Noir. I often just buy this by the case as just my go-to bottle of wine. One of the few wines that I really enjoy just to have. It's quite light. I just really enjoy it. I actually love my New Zealand Pinots, and this is just
Tasmanian Pinot's fantastic.
Tasmanian's amazing too. This one happens to be Great Southern WA, but I really enjoy it, and I just thought I'd bring a bottle of this in. So
Beautiful.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
So,
Cheers. I don't think I've ever had the same wine twice.
Ding ding. Ever.
watch out this week.
Yeah.
Right, so I recently read a Taylor Pearson email that was explaining how significant the Cambrian explosion was to life on Earth. You can check out, if you don't know who Taylor Pearson is, he's pretty amazing individual. I think it's taylorpearson.com, and but his email goes on to say that the Cambrian explosion is so called because of a period of only 20 million years. So 20 million years is only like 0.5% of Earth's 4 billion year history. And in this time, almost all present animal classes appeared. Before the Cambrian explosion, most organisms were simple, basically composed of individual cells. But by the end of that time, the world was populated by a huge variety of complex organisms. During the explosion, the rate of diversification accelerated by 10x. It took biologists a long time to come to terms with the Cambrian explosion because it appears sort of counterintuitive. Shouldn't evolution happen consistently, gradually, in a linear fashion? And that's what Charles Darwin thought anyway. As it turns out, no. Evolution works through long periods of little adaptation with rapid explosions like the one that took place in the Cambrian period. Because evolution is such a rich metaphor, we often use it to talk about our personal lives and careers. However, we often make the same mistakes in our own personal evolution that biologists made. We expect progress to be consistent, gradual, and linear, when it is actually inconsistent, variable, and non-linear. This can lead us to basically burn out and try and turn a period of slow growth into a fast one, and it can also lead us to miss opportunities for rapid growth by focusing on the wrong types of opportunities. So that's a bit of a summary of his email, and I really enjoyed seeing that sort of piece of science, which really very much explains the peaks and plateaus, the conversation that we've had a few times about how this, growth is just not linear. And if I wind back, even just looking at finances in my own business, like it's clear when you look at the months, it just hasn't been linear growth. There's been fairly steady, constant, like small growth, and then like periods of rapid rise and change. And they're all sort of easily explained in hindsight. But at the time, we didn't realize that we had to sort of change those one or two things to really like launch things out of the park and take the business to a new level. But I think we can do this in all sorts of areas of our life. So what I wanted to talk about, I guess, is have we experienced these periods of Cambrian leap in our business or life? And I'd love to just go through and talk about it with everyone, really, and just find out different examples of when this has happened in your life. And I'm going to start with Jacob.
Oh, good choice.
Yeah, Jacob, let's do this.
So as soon as I read this, it reminded me of an old quote I saw on the internet by Abraham Lincoln. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. It kind of alludes to the idea of laying the foundations upon which you can grow. If you look at like a time lapse of a house build, the earthworks and the foundation take a significant period of time, and then all of a sudden the business or the house begins to kind of take shape. For me personally, as the business, we had a long period where there wasn't a lot happening. We were building, we were establishing, we were applying for permits and things, and then all of a sudden we opened the gym, and within our first couple of months we had our first 100 members. Overnight success. Then we went through a period of plateau, and we kind of members held, and then we go through another growth phase. We add another 50 to 100 members, and then we plateau again. Similarly, when we first introduced our kids program, we had probably 2 to 3 terms of a few kids rocking up and like no systems and anything in place, and then almost overnight when we changed it up and kind of really put a bit of thought into it, it filled up, word of mouth grew, and now it's a booming kind of part of what we do. And again, it appears like it came out of nowhere, but often that's because the public see this overnight success, whereas we know that all the foundations, the work, the growth that went into it, and then finally once the foundations were strong enough to build on, then the skyscraper could be built, essentially. So yes, I've gone through these very non-linear periods of growth, and I'm starting to come to terms with how that's actually occurred. Conrad?
Oh, we're just passing the parcel.
Well, we can pass the parcel, yeah.
Oh, well, what do you want to do? I don't mind.
Yeah, no, look,
I'll
I wouldn't.
talk a lot.
I wouldn't.
Anyone else that wants to talk some?
I wouldn't mind going around the room, but yeah, let's unpack that. So, what do you think it is? I mean, obviously, the opening of the business is a big one, and that's pretty normal. So, there's always a period of time where you're doing that pre-work. You have to arrange financing, permits, all these other things, especially for a physical, effectively retail style outlet that you have. Like, you have to make sure that everything's in place before you can open the doors to the public, so to speak. Whereas others in a service business might be able to just find a client, for example, and just sort of start on day one. You have to have the whole place as ready as possible.
Yeah.
So what has been like? What does the next leap look like? So was it hiring some key staff that helped you launch forward, or
I think big one is that at the time, from probably about 4 to 5 months into the business through to about 6 months after that, we had a PR person or company engaged to represent us and do PR, kind of different to traditional marketing or even digital marketing, but PR was just an opportunity that came up, and we were on the news. We were in newspapers. We had front page of Sunday Times. We had all these sort of things that got us in front of hundreds of thousands of people in Perth. And because we were also one of the first gyms doing the style of training we do, that also meant that over that kind of, we had a bit of a lull for the first 6 months after opening, and then all of a sudden all these people that had seen us were starting to look for something new, and then we had another big kind of boom, and then that quietened off. And then I think the next one was when we ran some deliberate marketing along with a Groupon sort of voucher or like a discount offer for summer, and then we got another wave of people. Like, often every promotion has a lagging effect on member numbers, and that kind of goes through some sort of growth. And at the moment I'm trying to work out what the next leap is going to be, and I've had more trouble with it recently.
I guess what I'm sort of looking at is trying to pick out these points, or what we can look at in hindsight from our own experiences, for the listeners to go, hang on, that's something that that's holding me back, and that I could uncouple that and fly. I think that's what I'm looking for. And
to 10 times your business?
To 10, whether it's 10 times or, whatever you're trying to achieve, but there's always, I feel like there's always a couple of sort of tethers sort of still attached from the next step. Like
It's your own bullshit.
usually
like
is your own bullshit. I mean, what you're coming up with there is mainly marketing, PR, and it sounds like you've just done some and then stopped and then gone back to it and it's worked again.
For our adult stuff, it's been pretty on and off, and like it's very hard to put your finger on it. I think for our kids stuff, the thing that changed is when we put almost a brand new team in place. Someone took over properly running that program. We developed a lot of systems, and kind of there was almost an overnight change in how the effort we put into it. And since then, it kind of had one big leap. Whereas we haven't had that focus yet, like a deliberate, consistent effort for the adult side of our programs.
It's interesting that you were saying with Jacob's business that you need to let go of something before that next Cambrian explosion happens. Whereas the Cambrian explosion was an addition, something coming into the oxygen that appeared, created that sudden rapid growth. So I suppose just sort of putting it in there, it's not always about letting go of things. It's about that whatever that fresh injection of
letting things in. But
that's what I actually think is the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think like my view on it is that you let go of some bullshit or some system or something you think you need, which clears this space for the next
but what is that thing that's going to be the element that's going to create that massive growth like that? And I think that's what you're talking about with the Cambrian explosion.
Usually it's clients.
Definitely that helps. It helps.
Or gymnasts.
Little things make big things grow. So it's not always just one element that's going to impact that and create that Cambrian explosion. Like it's the sort of thing, it's like when you're selling products. Like if you sell a lot of little ones, it equals a big, explosion.
But that's something like the viral stuff online, right? I mean, it goes to a point, and then it goes bang. And I think sometimes, whether it's letting go or letting in, I think it's one of the same thing, depending upon what
I was
you're
probably
creating
just trying to
space
be a little too literal with the Cambrian thing, because I think oxygen was there was a big increase in oxygen in the atmosphere during that. Going back to the Cambrian thing.
Yeah, that might happen.
Yeah, I thought we might talk about
So what's your oxygen? What's going to be your oxygen?
clients.
Clients.
But we've been playing the incremental increase in members game for 3.5 years now, and at the moment,
Organic growth.
But it is very incremental and linear, or semi-linear. Whereas at the moment, I'm working on an online program to reach many more people that can't physically access our gym, and also nationally and potentially even internationally. And that has the potential to be the next, like our kids program doubled our income over 12 months. This could likely do the same thing. Whereas we're unlikely to get twice as many members over that period of time without radically changing what we do.
And you turn into a cult like F45 or those, what are those other types of CrossFit gyms?
CrossFit similar, yeah. They've done very well, and I'm trying to model aspects of that, but also trying to be ourselves.
Just pick a god, mate.
Yeah, the other sort of example I think that rolls into that is sometimes people, like within a business, and sometimes you don't realise, like once someone that you thought you were reliant on, and then they move on and you thought it was going to be a problem, actually clears a space for a far better skill set or energy or something to roll into the room, which can change. I mean, even for yourself, Mike, in that, like, you relied on yourself as the skill set, and you're worried that someone else wouldn't necessarily be able to do the same as you, and then all of a sudden you're working with Victor and someone else, and you're like, oh, hang on, this is way better than I could have thought. But you sort of hold on to, that's what I meant by the hold on.
You get into an easy space as well, don't you? Like a
comfortable
comfortable space.
Well, there's been multiple times where I've let go or done something in my business, and there's almost been an instantaneous growth or a surge of some sort. Like it's just been crazy. I love this analogy. I think it helps to put things into perspective, to allow you to keep doing the work, because there's so many examples out there of people who are considered that overnight success, and you don't realize how much work has been put in day to day. And some of the obviously I'm a big fan of Gary Vee, and Gary Vee is a great example of that. He just blew up in the last 2 years, and he'd been doing the same thing that he's been doing for nearly 10 years straight. There's videos out there of him just speaking the same thing that he talks about now, 10 years ago on a crate in New York City to 10 people. And he's just exploded all. He would be the example of, there was a moment, for whatever reason, if there was a graph of his reach, it just 10x'd over a period of a month or two, and has just continually gone on exponential growth. And content is the same. And I think it's hard to pinpoint moments other than they are generally the outcome of some form of significant action. You had to let go of this big decision that you have to make, and you've been sitting on it for like 3 months, and then you do it, and then all of a sudden you just take, like, what the fuck? And generally that's always
I think we're using
what
Kaboom
happens.
just now
Kaboom
to
yeah.
highlight that.
I don't know how you can create it though. It's almost like a...
I think you know when you're there, or like when you're close to it, and I think you probably know that there's a couple of things or something that's bothering you. And I mean, maybe not early on, but I think now, like where I sit at now in business, I think I know. Like I think I know I'm very close to one now, and I can sort of
You get a feeling.
I can sense, and I
Kaboom
have
is
an idea.
coming.
Well, I have the idea of the 3 or 4 or 5 things that I need to take action on that will probably make a far from linear change. But then I wouldn't have had that awareness when they've happened.
So what
earlier
about
on.
the taking action part then? Is that something you then plan into the process, or should you just be doing it?
Well, I think you're always taking action. Like I don't think I wasn't taking action during what I would say call a plateau.
You said that there's like about 5 things that you should be doing that's going to create the next growth. So I
like
suppose-
there's another, say, 3 to 5 action items that need to be finished.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when they do, like elements of them, I think will start to, like, the analogy of the hot air balloon still with the 3 or 4 ropes down, I suppose. I think you take off the last 1 or 2 and momentum will build and you're off for another leap, and then you'll hit very quickly the next ceiling.
And when do you then control the burner, I suppose, because
well,
too much
ideally.
growth can be
Maybe.
Yeah.
But
Can be
has
too
anyone
much.
read the book Good to Great?
Yeah.
Which I forget the author, but they studied
Is that
essentially.
Jack Collins?
Sorry,
Is Jack Collins good to great?
Jim Collins.
Jim
Jackie
Collins,
Collins.
I think so. Jim Collins.
Jim
Collins.
Jack.
They studied 100 companies over 100 years on the stock market, and there were only 7 that fit into this category. It's very analytical. And majority of them existed for a long time. So Walmart was the same. He had 1 store for 10 years. And then all of a sudden just went, if you looked at Good to Great, this pretty much of those companies fits this criteria.
And that's what you talked about before. It's that you see them as an overnight success, but you forget about the years and years of work that was put in on a small scale.
Yeah.
McDonald's is the same.
Yeah, McDonald's is the same. So I think it's really good for sometimes just a perspective to be like, okay, I might not be getting the results today, but you got to keep doing what you're doing.
Well, you do to
as
an
well.
extent, but you've got to also iterate along the line to get to where you want to get to.
Yes.
Evolve.
Well, I guess that's part of something else that was here is when do you know whether you're stuck or whether you are doing the right actions to enable that kaboom to happen. That can be tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a twofold thing. I think you've got to be doing the work, and then you've got to be asking yourself the questions as to what else more can you be doing. You've got to stay. What's that saying? You're content but never satisfied. You've got to continually look to improve and innovate internally to get the systems and synergies to allow you to deal with the growth that you're trying to achieve. Because you will never grow into anything bigger than what you're capable of becoming. You will never do that. Okay, because you have no capability of capturing or retaining that scenario.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest problem people have. They have great lofty dreams, but have no capacity to keep it.
Yeah. And the other thing that can happen is, I mean, if we're keeping the analogy with Earth and its journey, is a catastrophic event that can happen, or something big that happens to your business that jolts you into making a decision pretty quickly and doing something differently. So that's the sort of shit that can And that's, humans wouldn't be around if it wasn't for the extinction of the dinosaurs. Mammals after the extinction of the dinosaurs.
I think
or the
Batman might take down a dinosaur.
Batman would. Batman beat Superman.
I'd like to see that.
Batman beat Superman, so why couldn't he beat a dinosaur?
We're talking about dinosaurs. Come on.
Maybe a herbivore.
But without that, what I'm saying, without that catastrophic event that killed the dinosaurs, humans would never have evolved. Like mammals had the next generation. So in business, what is maybe you don't always want a catastrophic event or something, but that can certainly point you in a different direction.
There's a lot of examples of businesses that have or people, entrepreneurs that have failed their first business and then gone forward and restarted and done well after that. That's been a common instance.
It's an implosion.
Wow. Many do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, because you don't know what you don't know. You really don't. And again, more along the lines of what I just said, it's great to have delusions of grandeur, but you don't have the mechanism to capture and retain. You can create, but if you can't keep it, then it's going to come in one hand and get the other.
Yeah, that can be the tricky part of not building safe, solid foundations. You talk about the house or the skyscraper.
Yeah.
There are plenty of examples where I think some people just get lucky with their kabooms in some respect. Right time, right place, but they're not prepared. They haven't done the work, and so it just all come crashing down. So that's something you got to be mindful of, I think, as well.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the Earth, when you're talking about the Cambrian explosion, the Earth was ready for what happened, and it obviously has gone where it's gone to because of that. If your business is not ready, or if your life is not ready for that next evolution, then you'll see it, but you won't be able to keep it.
Like the dinosaurs.
Well, they couldn't keep it. They got frozen out.
I saw it coming.
As an insolvency accountant, I saw that a lot, mate. Like, as an insolvency accountant, I saw 20-year veterans in business coming into appoint an administrator because they'd made a couple of significant mistakes. And I was young at the time, and I was like, how is this? And you started to realise, well, actually, they've just ridden the right wave for 15, 20 years. That just happened to get them to all these amazing places. And some of their fundamental structures on how they thought business should operate were broken. But
that's happening now.
That's happening again now, but that was I was 19, 20, and I was looking at this like, how have they got there? And really they were just following like one of these explosions, and then when it starts to plateau after a while, they're going to come unstuck because they're not going to continue to do the work to keep on improving.
Well, that book you talked about, Good to Great, I remembered reading it a long time ago, so I just pulled up some of the quotes, one of the biggest ones here. Greatness is not a function of circumstance. Greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter of conscious choice and discipline. And what do you know about discipline? Discipline creates your freedom. But so then where are you applying your discipline?
Yeah, well, it comes back to also, I think, with this, Peter Thiel's, how could you take your 10-year plan and do it in 3 to 6 months?
And resource cannot be your excuse.
No, I think in some of the notes here, mate, you had that in here. Majority of us probably could achieve maybe not 10 years, but definitely 5 years.
100%.
3 months if we were going to die in 3 months.
Well, I'm making decisions now to double my business in the next 2 or 3 months, mate. From a business perspective, I've taken. I
so
believe
you're
I've
about to hit a kaboom. So you been on that kind of like?
Well, I'm not 10 times. I'm doubling it. So.
Flat line. Have you been on a flat line the last couple of years?
Yep. Yeah. I wouldn't say last couple of years. Probably the last year. And there's a lot of other factors that have come about that's allowed that to happen.
So what did you need to say, either let go or add, if we're coming back to that to get into this?
Just timing. I mean, one conversation has petered out, so that created the opportunity, and coincided with other people wanting to exit, and my business being ready to acquire.
Coincidence or prep work?
Oh, you've got to do the prep. Like I said, I've built this business to do this. We were going to do it through merger with another business and build scale that way. That hasn't happened. So, my question came, okay, well, do I believe it enough to do it myself? And that's what it came down to.
And that's awareness as well, as sort of knowing what situation you're in and going, okay, we need to go down this path, or that path. So you're moving with the flow of the business and sort of letting opportunity arise or not opportunity, letting problems arise in the business, then making a decision on that and going down that path.
Yeah, I mean, but what becomes problematic in itself is the opportunity to choose. So in the event of somebody else making a decision for you, which is what happened with the conversations we're having with the merger conversations, a lot of it was out of my control. I knew I was ready for some level of growth, whether it become organic through merger and acquisition or through purchasing. One way to me seems safer than the other, and naturally you choose a safer path with some of these bigger conversations, and that hasn't happened, so you go down the other path. The issue was I didn't stand still for very long. It was literally minutes in the head and into the phone call to make the conversation.
Which just keeps the momentum moving forward.
Yeah. So it's funny how, like, even there, you chose in somewhat, it sounded like you were going to go down a path of comfort.
On face value, it looked like it would be. I mean, I always knew that it was probably going to be. I mean, put it this way. On face value, it looked comfortable.
But going the other way...
The truth was it was always going to be hard for me to fit in wherever that merger took me, and I was prepared for that ride. So it was knowingly going to challenge me, and I accepted that.
Yeah, but going the other way is at face value more discomfort, but probably yields a better outcome.
Yeah, anyway. The funny thing, more discomfort is because you're committing yourself to delivering without any real cover, and your ball's on the table, and because it's not anybody else. So yeah, it is a little bit more uncomfortable, but you also have control of that to a larger extent. But again, you got to take the bets that are available, and you got to make smart bets along the way. I'm the type of bloke that takes a fair bit of risk because I don't give a fuck what I leave this planet with. I don't have anything else to have a go at other than creating something that I believed I could create. So when the opportunity presents itself, you mitigate what you can mitigate, but you've got to make decisions. You got to step forward. Put up or shut up.
Mic drop.
Well, I don't know any other way you grow. I mean, we can continue the organic game. You guys can grow organically.
It's not to say that's a bad thing.
No, it's not
either.
a bad thing, but it's not a 10x game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not even a 5x game.
Well, I think even if you try, when you look back, you'll see that it's never just linear. It's never just organic. I mean, patches might be organic.
Yeah, patches.
And just,
exactly right.
But then it's
they're your
not
plateaus for me.
Yeah, patches, plateaus. They can. It doesn't really
Peaks,
matter.
valleys.
But it's. I think people are either consciously doing it and taking those chances to make large, big scale changes, or they're just not, and then it is happening anyway. And maybe there's a decision that was made, or someone else made a decision for them, for example, that made that change. And look, this happens the other way too. Like
you got to do the work.
A sharp drop happens because you didn't make the right decision too.
Yeah, but you still got to do the work. So in those quiet times, you've got to be creating the space, whether through systems, processes, whatever, to allow the oxygen to appear. You've got to do that. So the Earth prepared itself for that next wave.
Well, I thought you might actually raise Warren Buffett. It was in. Did you read the article?
Yeah,
Taylor's article, and he actually just did raise Warren and how everyone knows him, obviously. Well, hopefully you do know him. If you don't, you can Google
make
it.
That assumption.
If you don't know him, then you'll go have a little bit of a look at his net worth and what he owns pieces of, like Coca-Cola and many other things. But he went through periods of where people were saying he was washed up and didn't know what he was doing anymore.
Saying it again.
They're saying
it again.
They're saying it again.
He's about to orchestrate one of the biggest buybacks in corporate America history.
Yeah.
But they're saying he's washed up, but he believes in the stock enough to buy it back.
And that makes him, and then all of a sudden he has a huge spike, and everyone's like, "Wow, look at what Warren's done." But he's spent years repositioning, his strategy and staying firm to it. And that's the same thing, having an explosion. And that's, I guess, the explosion is a result. Then there's a lot of action which feeds into that period of time beforehand, which then matches that explosion.
Because even coming back to, if you want to take it really scientific, Mike, surely just the one addition of oxygen, it would have needed all the other 99.9% of all the other ingredients that were already brewing with just that one last drop for that to happen. I find that really fascinating, and particularly when you're struggling, when you are plateauing. And it's the same with content or image creation, like creative. There's a really admired studio from our space in the 3D architectural space, and they're called Mia, and they're like everyone looks up to them. They produce some of the best images in the world, and at the conference we held earlier in the year, we had one of the guys who worked there present, and what we found out was that each individual there is required to produce like up to 20 to 30 sketches a week on an image. So there's 10 people there, so you're getting 300 potential sketches. To give you an example, we do 30 images a month, so they're doing 300 a week. So just based on ratios, you would expect a couple are just going to pop. And so, they've got a portfolio on their website of these 20 amazing images, and you forget that there's probably 3,000 duds that have been, not maybe duds, they're probably half good too, but there's 3,000 images that have been made over the last few years that no one sees. Because of the amount of work that they put in. I think for creatives, it can be comforting to know. And even then, we've had a couple images, and even when I was starting off, you have one or two images that just pop, that you have no idea why, but you're still doing the work and being consistent. We did, I think, our first blog post, which was encouraged out of when we did, I did my first business course, the Entourage Scale and Saleable, and it popped. It went viral, and but the irony was we didn't do another one for 12 months. So it popped and we did fuck all. And I think that comes back to yourself, Jacob, of I think we do those things, but if we weren't ready for it, I don't think we were ready for it back then. To capitalize.
Social media is a great example. I mean, to get a pop, you have to have done hundreds of just practicing and refining and getting it right, and two people liking it and no one responding, and then all of a sudden you get one right and everyone's like, wow. It's yeah, but you can't see the subtleties of what you've changed and what you've learnt in that process. And that's a great example of that.
Being ready for it is so important. There's a great book, Outliers. I'm pretty sure Malcolm Gladwell wrote it, and he talks about the timing of something plus the preparation that's gone in to take advantage of that opportunity is what creates these big kind of outliers in success. He talks about there was an era in the 70s, I think it was. There was, if you look at Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, there's 3 or 4 big tech giants from that era that were more or less born within 2 to 3 months of one another.
Okay.
In that they're all within about 12 months or so, because they all came of age about 17, 18 years old at the exact same time that computers were just getting huge, and they had the time to spend days and days and weeks investing in it when this was brand new. So by the time they'd put in the 10,000 hours, which he considers to be the amount of time to become an expert in something, then when the opportunity came and computers hit mass market, they could take advantage of that.
Do you know what their oxygen was, though? Philosophy.
It was a great book as well called Mastery by Robert Greene, which I find I really enjoyed that book because his writing style is he will support his arguments with examples from history.
Yeah.
And he talks about the most ones that notable for me were Mozart and Einstein were the exact same situations. Einstein had been studying this stuff for over 10 years. Even though he was the youngest, he'd been studying this for over 10 years before he had his kaboom moment. Mozart was the same. He had written thousands and thousands and thousands before he had his kaboom moment. Pretty much after that moment, anything they make for the most part is then considered amazing, which is a fascinating concept as well, kind of once they hit that fame piece. So I think, it's, I don't know, Do you find this comforting sometimes or not?
I think I agree. You could find it comforting in the like if you're feeling like you're in one of those plateaus at the moment, and you feel like you're making differences and changes and improving, but it's not like you're not getting closer to your target. Then I think it would be comforting in that regard because you're like, well, hang on, all right. I know that needed to happen, but also there's still more that needs to happen, and clearly it couldn't happen. Because I think sometimes when we look at those targets, I think we can, if we're realistic, we're like, yeah, we're not ready. Like if we said, hey, throw 100% on top of your business right now, you're not really ready for it. And that's, I think, the challenge, because the truth is you're not. So, but if you were and you had this, the things that were ready in place to take that scale to the next level, it's proof that you would have been working on something a little different, or you would have been, building that replacement system. Let's say it's a HR system capable to take on 17 people instead of 6. Like, because we do sort of build into limitations into everything that we're creating as we go for it. Yeah.
That's where you got to start with the end in mind, which will come back to the building. You can't put a second story on a house that's only ever had foundations for one without major rework.
Completely redesign the
foundations.
Yeah. To what degree does luck play a role in these explosions?
What is luck?
Using an example,
Do you feel lucky?
in the book Outliers, he talks about how most, I think it's either American or Canadian hockey players who are drafted into the NHL, I think it is, most are born in January, the next few in February, March, and pretty much after about April, May, almost none, because they're born right at the start of the year. By the time they get to 5-6 years old and they're getting selected for the teams, they've got the most physical preparedness and they kind of, as soon as they're in school, they're drafted and they're selected, and therefore they get picked for the team. They get the hours on the field, they get the minutes, and therefore they elevate through the programs and they get picked for all the programs. So to what degree is, like, if you're born in December, they're like, pretty much don't bother. So it's something like sport.
So just stay down a year and crush it.
Yeah, that's it. So there are examples where luck and things out of your control can potentially contribute. I don't think business is necessarily one of them. There are people who have started businesses in 2008 at the start of the financial crisis, for example. One of us.
Groupon was the fastest growing business in that time. One of the fastest growing in history, I think. Groupon.
Yeah,
And
people use it as an excuse, but there are plenty that flourish, and Tony Robbins talks about it when things are going one way. He goes, here's a perfect opportunity to go the other way. I know, Conrad, that's something you've mentioned at times
Zig
as
with
well.
another zag.
Yeah.
I think there is an element of luck, but it's only.
But what is luck?
It's only capitalized.
What do they define luck as? It's when hard work meets
preparation and opportunity, right?
Creates that timing, that piece. Like, if you're ready for it, you'll capitalize on that luck. Otherwise, you'll become one of the stories that you'll never hear about. You had the lucky moment, but you never took it. And so how many of them would you know? You only know the good ones.
Yeah, there's plenty of kids born in January who are shit at hockey as well.
Yeah, like me.
Mate, the Royal
I was left-handed, mate. I couldn't do jam.
The Royal Commission for the Royal Commission for my industry happened, and everybody is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But like I said to someone the other day, I created our business for this moment. So it would be negligent of me not to take the opportunity.
Nice, Mike. You've been a bit quiet. How have you?
I've said a few things.
Felt.
Oxygen.
Quiet and sharing elements of perhaps your story. Have you gone through periods of this, whether business or life, and where you felt things sort of launch forward?
I'm on the slowly but surely path, I think, just now. Maybe in that 3 billion years before the Cambrian explosion.
Do you feel Victor has been a Cambrian explosion? Or has the potential to?
Of course, yeah. Oh, definitely the potential to. Definitely. And we've seen results with that addition straight away.
Mike had to give up some of his oxygen.
I did.
Yeah.
Just breathe. Breathe, Michael. I'll be all right.
And mushroom coffee.
I'll bring that back one day, don't you worry. Or just mushrooms, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I'm a steady as it goes sort of person. I
I know, which is why I'm wondering if you had some spikes.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Michael's the definition of, like, in the kindest way, linear.
In the kindest way.
But linear going
straight
up
line,
like
you.
that. Yeah, I suppose to a degree. Yeah. Yeah. End of question. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think my business has had its little bits, and I think for me over the last few years is the action part, is the really working on the processes, the stuff that you need to build a business. That's probably the most important part. I was in a really easy space for a long time, which is fine, and created a great lifestyle and money and whatever. But and that's the thing. This is the thing. Is it the massive growth that I want? And I suppose I'm still struggling with that a little bit. I don't think it is. I don't want to become the next brand agency or
No,
whatever.
but it might
is.
not be just top line revenue. It doesn't have to be just that in terms of growth. It could be other things, like maybe it's caliber of work, and maybe you do become that.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
You do
there's-
get in an easy space with work, and you get into the groove of what you do, and maybe there is spikes in that where you. I mean, I'm going to come back to the philosophy part. That's when you maybe open up different parts of your brain and sort of aim down a different path. Which
Well, there's
which
a
can
guy.
help.
There's a guy I know who was a very much probably just a graphic designer and just did a little bit of artwork for nearly probably 18 to 20 years in his career, mainly a freelancer. Had a bunch of kids, sort of got by very frugally, and then next minute Vine came along, and he all of a sudden he was doing 50 grand vines for like the likes of all the major brands in the States, just as a one-man show.
Yeah.
So like that's an explosion in his income, as a one-man operation. Like,
Yeah.
so it
But
doesn't
that's
have
happened to
be-
you, Trav, in your business, in your photography business.
I've had probably two Cambrian explosions in my photography business. So I'm coming up to 10 years in November. The first one was 3 years in when, the major impact was I chose to get up before 9 a.m. and I chose to work after 3 p.m. So my work day changed from 6 hours a day to 10, 11, 12. So that was my first explosion. And it exponentially...
Funny that. Longer work hours.
And then my second one is actually this year. I'm on track to 7 times my GP for this year for photography. And that was by innovation and also relinquishing control. So allowing people to do
scaling.
other jobs. So yeah, they're the two. And I kind of was forced to because I have pewter on the side that requires more of my grind time. I needed to find a way to have the ability to make the same income, and in this case make more by doing less. So it kind of forced me to enable that. So yeah, they're the two kind of explosions I've had in my journey so far.
Awesome. Well, I might wrap it up unless anyone has got something to add in that they wanted to talk about. But you, Jacob?
I just there's a comment you mentioned on the last podcast where you said that there was a time in your life where you decided to be baptized and Christianity came into your life, and that made a huge impact on you. Do you see that, not necessarily from a business perspective, from a personal perspective, as one of your Cambrian explosions in terms of just,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Certainly around mental health, mindset. Definitely a place where it just gave me. It's hard to, I guess, explain, but just a solid foundation of who I was and where I was at, and just made some decisions around that, and allowed certain things to mean what they meant to me, rather than to be, for example, dictated in what they meant to me by, society or other people, or what that looks like. So definitely I've had some that in that regard, and I've definitely had business examples of that too. So I think they can be, varied, and I also thought it might be interesting to see whether anyone raised the whole religion card and all that around the explosion and what
No,
happened
I'm not
there.
touching
So
that
I wondered if it might pop up.
I still
But,
believe in Adam and Eve.
well, you can. All that happened in a very short period of time, Conrad. So anyway, we won't go into that today. We'll save that for another episode, probably one where Mike is hosting. It seems to be when we
We
hit
need to
those
tape him
topics.
to his chair though.
But anyway, thanks for joining. Actually, can we get a straight jacket organised for the next session? Look, guys, thank you for indulging me. I hope you enjoyed. Well, how did you feel about the Pinot from Madfish?
Lovely.
Pinot
Very
Noir?
enjoyed it.
Yeah, I quite
Haven't
enjoyed
had
that.
one of those from Madfish, so yeah, it was really nice.
Very good. Okay, if you're listening in, we'd sort of love to hear about your changes or 10. When have you 10x'd your business? When have you had one of these explosions? Or is there something that's holding you back right now that you just need to reach out for? We talked recently, I think on the last episode, about mentors, and maybe you need to reach out on here and write a comment, let us know where you're at, and maybe someone out there is going to help you mentor you into this next 10x phase or this 2x phase or whatever it is you're going for. But
1.2.
1.2x phase, I'd say that's more linear growth, Mike. But we can,
Linear Mike, new
we
nickname.
can go for that linear Mike. And gents, thanks for joining me on the show. And until next time, guys, like, subscribe, share it with a friend, please. We would love more people to hear what we're doing, and we hope you've enjoyed this episode. And until next time, ciao.
Bye bye.
Peace.
Bye.
Fine.